Hey everybody, welcome back to what I'm pretty sure is the 123rd episode of Taps and Patience. I'm AJ with Subtract Manufacturing and Audacity Micro, and here with Harrison of Precision Ingenuity. Hi Harrison.
Hey AJ, how we doing?
I'm doing all right. I think I'm a little bit less tired than you for once. Normally I'm the one that's like, I'm so tired, but you've been busy.
Yeah, I've been traveling the world traveler these days.
The far off exotic lands
of Canada.
of Canada.
Yeah, we on a two week vacation. The first week was with my whole family, and then me and my wife split off on the second half and did a week just
Cool.
the two of us in Canada. So we went up to Michigan, and then we took a ferry across Lake Michigan into Wisconsin, and we stayed in the Wisconsin Dells, specifically the Kalahari, for a couple nights, and then we kind of drove up over the top of Lake Michigan and came in and went to Mackinac. We went to Mackinac Island and stayed a couple nights there. Then came down into Michigan. We have a whole bunch of family in Michigan. That's where my dad and grandpa are originally from. So we visited with them. Ended up being a kind of a good and bad at the same time. We had some family that passed away on the trip, and so we were actually there for the funeral and the showing. So that was not planned, not a happy event, but it was nice that we were able to do it while we were there. So
A bad event with good timing.
bad event with good timing. And then from there, my family dropped us off in Indiana somewhere. I forget where.
I know that place.
Yeah. We hopped on a train and we took it into Chicago, and we went to the Science Museum and kind of visited that. And then from there, we took a plane into Canada, and we went to Toronto is where we came in. And then we stayed there for a day. And then we went up to Ottawa. Yeah. And then we ended in Montreal.
Ottawa?
And we just kind of took a train through all these different locations and kind of stayed Airbnbs along the way. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. We, of course, had some 4th of July activities. I kept spending far too much time outside, and I feel like I was constantly dehydrated for the whole time and being like, oh, I'll catch up tomorrow. And then there was one more thing that I had to do outside. I had to surprise remove a stump was one good example. And we have our, what is it now, our 4th super secret business of the Airbnb. And we had to kind of hold like that super secret Airbnb is a camper. And we had our first guest of the season. And so we had to I took down the campsite we had set up, mowed everything, weed whacked, got it looking pretty, brought the camper into my shop, did some work on it, brought it back out. And it was it actually wasn't as hot as it had been, but it was so humid out that just the air was thick and everything just had a layer of condensation on it. So it was kind of miserable, but I actually enjoyed working on that camper and the air conditioning of my shop. If I had wood ready, I would have made some cabinets and stuff on my laser, but I didn't. So I just fixed a couple leaks that had shown up over the last season.
Yeah. We got to stay in some pretty cool Airbnbs on our trip. It was a lot of fun. I haven't done a whole lot of that, and it was a lot of fun.
Have you ever watched Ryan Trahan on YouTube?
Doesn't ring a bell.
So he's doing a series right now where he's staying in an Airbnb in every state.
Yes, I did.
As a fundraiser for St. Jude.
Yeah, I think I did see something like that.
I've really enjoyed that series. It's just been a thing that we do every day. I'll come in for lunch, I'll get a second cup of coffee, and my wife and I will watch the newest Ryan Trahan of the day.
Yep.
All right, deal. So I think I'm about to do something controversial with Subtract. I think it'll be both controversial to the shop people. I think it'll be even more controversial to the YouTube comments. I think the shop people will be like, okay, cool. I think the YouTube comments are going to be like, what? You're doing something non-traditional?
What's that?
So I originally wrote a inspection process for Subtract,
Mm-hmm.
and let's be honest, it was heavily inspired by the Xometry one. It was not a one for one copy, but like it was definitely
Inspired.
written with that frame of mind in place. So I did that one, and I put it out for review for the shops on the network, and I sat on it for a while, and then I kind of went into a deep rabbit hole of learning about quality and inspection. I read a Shigeo Shingo book, Zero Process Control. I kind of looked into like some of the more lean methods, and the realization I had, and by I mean what Shigeo Shingo said in his book, was that the traditional way of doing process control does not prevent defects. It just attempts to catch them.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's not preventing them, there will always be some defects that will always slip through unless you're doing 100% inspection of every part.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't want that. With Subtract, we never ever want to ship a defect. That's our goal. No defects ever. And so going down like the Shigeo Shingo rabbit hole, his whole thing is about using inspections to prevent defects from happening. He does cheat by defining defect as a bad part that ships, and I'm going to use his definition. So he calls like if you make a part that's out of spec but you don't ship it, he calls that a mistake and not a defect.
Mm-hmm.
And a defect is a bad part that you ship, and I'm going to use his definition. So basically, the Shigeo Shingo method is to check your equipment, make sure that it is calibrated and good.
Mm-hmm.
Which I actually don't have any of that in my inspection process. Maybe I should add that. I don't know. So, for example, he would probably say, check all of your tool lengths and wear offsets before you run a part. That'd probably be something he says, because then you're going to not make as many bad parts to begin with, or not make any bad parts. The other thing that he is big on is in-process inspection. And so with my inspection process, I am requiring 100% inspection, or 100% in-process inspection of any feature that it's easy to make a go, no-go gauge for, basically. So holes, really easy to make a go, no-go gauge. For that, you just use 2 gauge pins. Rectangular slots and pockets, you can do the same thing with gauge blocks. You basically just have to have 2 separate stacks of gauge blocks. One is a go, one is a no-go. Or sometimes with a slot, you can use a gauge pin as a go, no-go, even though it's round in a square hole. Thread gauging, and then the just basic outside dimensions of a part, length, width, height, if they're easy to measure with a pair of calipers or a pair of mics. I'm requiring 100% inspection on that. The flip side of that is if you do 100% inspection, on all of those features, you don't have to remeasure those for the final inspection report. You can just call them go or no go, because you already checked every single part. And then I've also compared to the Xometry standards of how many parts to inspect. So I don't have the exact numbers in front of me here, but Xometry might say if you make 10 parts, then you need to inspect all 10 of them. If you make 50 parts, then you need to inspect 25 or whatever. My numbers are somewhere between a half and a third of what Xometry recommends. So, and then also not requiring things that have already been go, no go to be re-inspected.
Okay.
I think I'm going to get pushback on this because I don't think customers are going to care at all. Customers just want good parts. And we aren't working with aerospace customers yet that might need something more specific than, go or no go. But we can cross that bridge when we get there. That we can make that a more expensive inspection. But I think this sets up, I think at first glance, it's going to look like more work for the shops. But in reality, it will be less work because 1, we're not going to let defects make it through the system at all. And then 2, doing go, no-go checks are super quick. compared to, sitting down with a part and using calipers and mics to go through every single dimension on it. And so if we can cut down the final inspection burden by moving that to in process, we can spend less time inspecting and not ship any defects.
So I don't think it's going to be necessarily controversial. I just don't know how you enforce it. Like with the inspection side of it, if someone checks that, say, yeah, I've inspected it and it's inspect, whether they've checked it in process or at the end, I don't know how you other than trusting people do that. Because if it's on the inspection sheet at the end, when from a time perspective they inspected it versus, because all you're getting is a document saying that they inspected everything and that everything's inspect. That's my biggest thing that I see with it.
That's true.
Because you would never know if things are coming out in tolerance. And so what I see as it is, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good direction to try to help out other shops. But it's also a culture. It could be a culture shock for some shops, and
yes.
trying to dictate how they do what you're asking them to do versus what standards they need to meet. That's where you're going to get the pushback. Like, I understand the desire to help people improve, but I don't think it's going to be enforceable or have any metrics that you can enforce it or know that people are doing it one way versus the other. Like on your end, getting the paperwork back, you could look over their parts and you could check everything they said and they could enter everything perfectly in that sheet, but you still have no way of knowing if they checked it when you told them to check it.
Yes. And my response to that is nobody has ever made an inspection report where they have marked a part as being out of spec and then shipped it to the customer. Right?
Yes.
No matter how you do inspection, if you do it right all at the end or if you do it beforehand or whatever, everyone will mark their part as good if they're going to ship it. Because if they realize that it's bad, they're not going to ship it, I would hope. And as long as the customers are getting good parts, I don't really care. So if they don't want to follow our guidelines, but they're shipping good parts, that does not bother me.
Okay, so these are not enforceable guidelines. They're just guidelines.
So the enforcement will be if a shop ships a bad part, we're going to do a review with that shop, and a single bad part will be grounds for getting kicked off the network.
Okay.
Now, it's not saying it will always be. Like, I'm saying we will do a review. And if it's like you didn't do your in-process inspections and it would have caught this, then you're gone. If it's like sometimes weird things happen, and I get that, and we'll talk about that. Like, we have had one quality issue, and it was an improperly installed helicoil. It's like, okay, I kind of understand that one. It was a classic conflict of the drawing not matching reality, but the shop went with what the drawing said, and it caught the helicoils were too long, and so the threads were bad. Like, communication errors, I get those. Misunderstanding the drawings, I get those. One of the parts that I shipped that was bad was it was supposed to be like M4 by 0.8 threads or M6 by 0.8. I don't remember what it was. Threads. And I read it as like M whatever threads, 8 millimeters deep. So I used the wrong thread pitch. Maybe it was M3 by 0.5. Is that fine pitch M3?
M3, you have 0.5 and 0.7.
Yeah, it was supposed to be M3 by 0.5, and I read it as like M3 5 millimeters deep or something like that, because the hole was 5 millimeters deep. But anyway, I used the wrong thread because I read the drawing wrong. And I inspected that thread. I just inspected it with the wrong gauge. Like, that stuff I understand, and like we'll do a review and figure that out. But if you ship a part that you say is good, and there's a hole that's the wrong size, and it's wrong size by a lot, like I would call that grounds for getting kicked off the network. So no points like Xometry does. We'll treat our shops well, but the standard is every part is good.
Are you providing drawings with balloons telling them what to inspect?
No, not at the moment.
Is that a goal?
It is something that we have considered. The consensus at the moment was basically we would be doing non-value added work, and the shop may want to inspect something differently. So like, let's say, for example, some people use height gauges for like everything. And if we dimensioned it in a way that was inconvenient for height gauges, then like it's just more of a burden for that shop without.
You don't have to, you're not dimensioning stuff, are you? Because like whenever you get parts from Xometry, Xometry will bubble the customer's drawings. Or are you having them inspect 100% of all features?
So
regardless of what the customer has put on their drawings.
If the customer puts it on their drawing, it needs to be inspected. If a drawing isn't provided, then there's a little bit of leeway on inspecting the things that matter.
Mm-hmm.
And again, with the 100% in-process inspection, it's stuff that can be easily no-go'd, or maybe stuff that can be easily grabbed with a pair of calipers and a mic. If it's like a form tolerance that you need to use an optical comparator or like a CMM for, like no, that's not included. We say on there, like if it's too difficult, like if it takes too long, just don't do that one in process. But really, if you get half a dozen good in process checks, cover, like if one of those checks covers each one of the tools that you're using, basically to make sure that each of the tools are good, then the rest of your part's probably good. And I don't think you're going to find anything in the final inspection.
Yeah.
It also forces the operator to carefully consider the part right after they unload it and pay more attention to, like, did a tap break? Is the chamfer mill starting to leave burrs? That kind of thing.
I don't really think it's controversial. I just don't think it's going to be enforceable unless problems arise.
That is true.
And I don't think it's gonna like, yeah. It'll.
You don't think it's gonna happen?
Yeah, I don't think like it's a nice thing, and I think it's a great mindset to be in. I just don't see it. I don't see people latching onto it if they are deep into their own processes.
That's fair, and I don't disagree. My philosophy is to, like, if we're going to set high standards, we need to give people the tools to meet the standards. And if they want to use them, great. If they don't want to use them and they're meeting the standards, that's fine with me.
Yeah. And so, like I said, like I don't think it's going to be controversial. To the same degree, I don't think it's going to be enforceable unless there's problems, if that makes sense. Like the controversy would be if you had to have documentation that they were in fact doing in-process inspections somehow via photos or some sort of evidence that you are doing these in the order we tell you to do them, then you would have pushback. But if you just have, these are the guidelines, we want you to do it this way, and people are like, I don't want to do it that way, I'm still being spec, who cares? Then you're not going to have any pushback. Even if that's a better way to do it. I mean, I do in-process inspection all the time. I don't really know. As a machinist, it's really hard to not do in-process inspection constantly. So it's like, I think people are doing that regardless on some level, no matter what.
Well, it's that 100% thing right there that makes the big difference.
Yeah.
I do also make exceptions for if you are running like a palletized or automated machine where it bumps up the sampling rate in the final inspection.
Yeah.
If you're not able to do in-process inspection for whatever reason, it's a bar-fed lathe, like No, you do not need to stand there and check every single part that comes out of the bar fed lathe.
Mhm.
But then you also don't get the nice, relaxed inspection sampling rate at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I have in there, and this one I suppose can go the same way, but I'm requiring a 100% inspected first article before continuing with the production run. Now, I am not requiring a like make the first article, submit the inspection to us, wait for us to approve it, and then go from there. But I don't want someone to make 100, op ones and then run 100 op twos without ever having run a part all the way through the process. So I want them to
Mm-hmm.
run one complete part and then and then inspect it and then run the rest. I also have a fairly heavy penalty for parts not made with a one piece flow method. Basically, I'm trying to force shops into one piece flow,
Mm-hmm.
which maybe I should just say that a little bit more clearly. But I think you're much more likely to make good parts in a one piece flow method. And I think it saves you in the long run over like a bulk production.
Mm-hmm. Says the guy who's famous for breaking things into into large batches.
Hey, I have been getting away from that. I even stopped doing the like 1.5 piece flow that I was doing on this big production job. And I am now in a 1 piece flow. It costs me about a minute per part on average, but it does make things a lot simpler. I have also been testing this, like my own inspection processes on this.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm going to, I start a long session of teaching here over the next like 11 months. And I'm going to use my students as kind of some test beds for this stuff.
Yeah. I think describing everything as best practices or how you would like things done and offer them as teaching aids and helping shops raise them up is going to be a much better method
That's fair.
than being like, you guys have to follow it this way. If we get a bad part from you guys, discover you didn't use the resources we provided, you're off the network. I do think there needs to be a little bit of leniency in there for a first offender, especially because not everyone reads the fine print and goes and reads all the documentation, and maybe they just don't know. And that's still on them, but at the same time, I'm kind of that person too. you know, I'll check everything to make sure it's as good as I am, but I don't always go through and read all the fine prints on everything. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the processes that I'm using are bad, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They are if you're not meeting parts to standard, but at the same time, there's a learning process. I haven't met an anodizer yet who gets my parts done right the first time.
Yep. Which is why Subtract needs to start up our own anodizer.
So I've been battling that. We had an anodizer that was doing a decent job, and they've been getting worse as time goes on.
That's
It's frustrating.
like, are you putting more work on them, or are they getting busier?
No,
Or
we found a different anodizer that we're gonna switch to. It was recommended to us by someone else. And so we're in the process of switching over, but we probably had shipped them, I don't know, 4,000 parts, 5,000 parts. And on the last couple thousand parts, we've had up to a 50% rejection rate.
holy cow.
Yeah.
That is not okay.
No.
I
And they lose our parts constantly. Like we'll ship them 250 and it's oh, this batch only had it was 4 parts short, and it's like we're shipping to you in custom design crates that if every hole is filled, it's equal to 250. It's very visually, and then like we had they're like, "Oh, you didn't ship us all of them." And then a couple months later, "Hey, we found 6 parts on a shelf." And it's like, I know we're shipping you 100, what we're shipping you. So anyways,
yeah.
it's just been frustrating.
Well, I'm going to put this out there to our audience. If somebody wants to start a really good anodizing shop, Subtract will use you as our sole supplier, assuming you live up to the quality we expect. We will pay you multiple times what most anodizers charge, and we will treat you well. So if somebody wants to start that shop, send me a message. We need somebody on the Subtract network that can do anodizing and other post processing. So,
Yep.
yeah. I don't remember if I mentioned this idea on the podcast at all, but something else that I want to do, and again, to kind of like, because I'm not going to force feed these processes to the shops. I will put them out there and we'll kind of do a don't ask, don't tell of like, we expect you to use them, but we're not going to, audit you.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to have some extra layer where I don't know what this would look like, but like if you can prove that you're following our processes, then we will provide like insurance against defects. Where if you have a part rejected and you're following all of our systems, then we'll pay the shop to remake the part.
Yeah. And that could be a good way to enforce it is, hey, if you're not following our processes and there is part failure, then you have to remake it for free. But if you can show you're using our processes and somehow it got through, then we'll pay to have you remake it. Yeah. That's a good enforcement mechanism.
The other thing we're figuring out right now is shipping. Our current method is to just kind of build it into the profit that the shop is getting. We're already paying well above and beyond what like Xometry and Fictive would pay. But in reality, that hasn't worked out as smoothly as I had hoped. It works fine on small, easy, predictable parts, but it falls apart. The worst case scenario is a large part that is relatively low dollar value. Like just putting in a percentage of the profits to go towards shipping doesn't really work for that. So I think we're going to get a shipping quote, and then as a separate line item on our PO, add that quote to the shop. So we'll still have the shop take care of shipping on their end. But like if it's a $1,000 job and then shipping is $100, then we'll make our PO out to them for $1,100 and they can, do whatever they want to do there.
So on that front, does it show that it's coming from the shop, or does it show it's coming from Subtract?
It's coming from the shop. We let our shops and customers freely talk.
Okay.
And the original plan was to send an email every time introducing the shop to the customer. Mostly because our systems are bad for it. We haven't been doing that. But I have no problem with the shop talking to the customer. Like we pay our shops well enough that it's not, I think, going to be an issue.
Sounds good.
Especially because they get they basically get half of the Subtract profits if it's repeat work. So at that point, I think their hourly rate for what they would spend communicating with the customer and quoting the job would be less than what they're missing out by taking the job directly. So,
good deal. So it's going good then? Got a couple jobs coming in for it?
We have, the end of June, we had a bunch of stuff. So far, July has been a little bit slower. But again, we aren't really doing any sales or marketing other than like this podcast. So I'm kind of okay with that. But I don't remember how much we talked about this, but we doubled in revenue from June to July. So I think even if we go back to the June numbers this month, I would be totally happy. Like that would be still fantastic. And I'm hoping we do more than the June numbers, but we'll see.
Fair enough. Did we have any questions? Because I've been gone for a little while.
So Kyle K says, should I do the Patreon plug?
You can do that if you want to do that first.
Okay. Speaking of Kyle K, we have Patreons. Those Patreons are awesome. They support us in making this podcast. They pay for editing and they pay Jacob to make sure that the podcast actually goes out on time. So there's no way that we would have been publishing podcasts with Harrison gone if it weren't for the Patreons being able to support Jacob to be able to like actually do the podcast. So Patreons are super critical here. At some point, we're going to start also using the Patreon to fund our next IMTS trip. That's like a year away, but it comes up fast on you. So Patreons, we appreciate you. All Patreons get access to the Q&A we'll do here in a second, including the free tier of Patreon. So if you don't have the cash to, shovel into our wallets, that's fine. You can join the free tier and you can still participate in the Q&A. If you join a paid tier, you get early access to our episodes, as well as access to the Patreon Discord, which, fun fact, is where Subtract started. It was born out of our Patreon Discord. So it's a pretty cool place to be. We have 2 new Patreons, Russ D and Ryan at Strato Manufacturing. And then our list of Patreons that pay $10 a month or more is Ryan at Strato Manufacturing, Austin W, Kyle K, Devin at Sinister Machine Works, James N, Ben at Prickly Pear Prototypes, Cam S, Shep at Alderson Prototyping, Jacob at Zonum Precision, Jason S, Joshua H, Christian Z, Freaky Climber, Prescott at 1Z2Z Systems, Trey V, Guy L, Alexander B, Scott at Design the Everything, Jamie at JSpec Engineering, Chris Zyke, EJ at Nocturnal Welding, Chris at Thought Bomb Design, and, as ever, Jake Brownson. This is getting long. I appreciate that it's long. Kyle says, when it comes to adding new capabilities or more efficient equipment, what comes first, the job or the machine? Do you take on challenging work and struggle through it while saving up, or wait until you're equipped? And when quoting, do you price it based on your current inefficient setup or the machine you hope to have?
It's a very good question. So for us, we try to pick, and this only works for us when you get to, there's kind of 2 different ways to look at this. You have the job shop, 1Z, 2Z, high mix, low volume type of work where you're trying to pick a machine to fit that environment. And then you have the production world where I have situations where I have a customer that goes, hey, I want 13,000 of these a year. Those are 2 completely different machine conversations. When you get into the higher volumes, that's when I will look at and go, what is the machine that is going to be the best fit for this job? And when I do that, I will try to pick a machine that is a good fit and that I will try to build the payments of that machine into the quote because it is a long-term guaranteed contract. And then you can base on going, if a customer calls me up today, I need 5,000, 10,000 of these parts a year, and I can justify buying a machine. That's what I'm going to focus on. That's one way to do it, and that's probably the easier way to do it. That's how we got our UMC. Was hey, the numbers make sense. We're buying a machine for this job. Now, granted, that machine that we bought wasn't specifically just for that job, but we also had other parts that were coming down the road, and so we're like, okay, this job would allow us to pay for it and get it on our floor and have excess capacity for this other stuff that we see coming down the road. Some of that work hasn't come to fruition, but we have other opportunities that are coming up. So, and then on the flip side, you have the high mix, low volume work. And in those situations, it becomes more about the machine rather than the work. What can the machine do? And in that case, you usually try to buy a machine that can do everything for the type of parts you're trying to, you try to come up with a family of parts or a size of parts, material, tool capacity. You're trying to make a machine that is the best fit for the type of work that you're trying to go after or that your customers are going to send you. And that's how we got our VF3. It's the Swiss Army knife of machines. It's not great at at any one thing, but it's good at almost everything. And so almost any job that's a good fit for our shop is a good fit because it fits on that machine.
The only thing I have to add is don't go into debt if you don't know that you're going to have work to pay for the machine.
Yeah.
Even if it's let's say it's your first machine and like you know that you can pay for it from your day job, I would still not buy that machine unless you know that you have work that the is going to pay for the machine. If you don't know you have work, then get a smaller machine that you can afford cash for.
The middle ground of those two things is a calculated risk, which is kind of how we have grown my business, which is I build relationships with customers. I know the type of work that they have. And so I buy the biggest machine I can afford with the most capabilities. And then I go after that customer knowing I can bring that work in. But I try to buy a machine knowing that if things go south, I can still make its payments. So and that's the calculated risk that we've had to make a couple times where we're buying just at the edge of what we can do, knowing that if shit hits the fan, we can still make its payments.
Jamie at JSpec Engineering says, and this was to Harrison, how was your holiday? Which for them means vacation.
Yeah. It was really good. I kind of already mentioned a little bit of our itinerary of what we did, but a couple highlights from the trip is I got to go see two different submarines, an American and a German. So the German sub was in Chicago and was the main reason I wanted to go to that museum. Shout out to the Fat Electrician if anyone's ever watched any of his videos. He did a really good one on, I believe it is the U-505 German U-boat that is in the Chicago Science Museum. It's a really good story, really cool story. So I got to go see that one. And then kind of not planned, but worked out beautifully was when we took the USS Badger, which was, I think it's the only, or it's either the only or the last steamboat that's still in commercial operation, but it's a ferry from one side from Michigan to Wisconsin, going back and forth. It's about a 4-hour trip. When we landed in Wisconsin, there was a USS sub, I believe it was the USS Cobra, that was right there at wherever we were offloading. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Do you guys want to stop over there real quick? And so I kind of got 2 sub tours, which is pretty cool. The other thing that happened is I got to meet up with my family, and they live in a whole different world. If anyone ever wants to look up DeWind One Pass Trenching. They make some of the largest trenching machines in the world. They can dig a trench down. About 5 or 6 years ago, the deepest they could go was about 120 feet, but I think they're beyond that now. And these are just absolutely massive machines. Multiple semi-loads to move them around. When I go up there, I feel like a tiny pebble. And like some of the equipment that they use is just insane. Anyways, I got to go tour one of the support machine shops that machine parts for them. And one of their machines had a 40-foot travel in the x-axis, and it had a 15-foot y and 12-foot z, and then it had a 4th axis rotate. So it had 2 platters, and then it had 2 bases that you could bolt stuff down to, and then in the very center it had a 4th axis, and the 4th axis was like a 10-foot rotating platform on the center. And it was so big that the controller for the CNC was an actual cab, and you could ride this machine back and forth and up and down. So like if you're 15 feet up in the air trying to machine something, you'd be in the cab and you can, get up there and watch it. So, I mean, it's just a whole different scale.
Wild.
Yeah. And they said that machine is not big enough to do all of the parts for my relatives up there. And there's one other shop that has a machine that I think can do 64 feet long. So yeah, it's a whole different world. Like, it was so funny. They gave us a tour of their facility, and they were, he was like, hey, if you got any work that you can't do that's too big, you can send it our way. And I was like, you guys might be a little bit too big for that. And it was funny because in the background they had one of their big machines, and it was machining like a 5-foot by 4-foot plate, like 1.5 inches, 2 inches thick. And they're like, yeah, we have a really good customer that we're doing this for. It's really way too small for us. And I'm like, that's way too big for anything that I would remotely have to send up your way. And so, like, I mean, it's a whole different world. Like, monster machines. Like, if you've ever watched, like, Modern Marvels, like, monster machine projects, like, it's all that. So, but, I mean, it was super cool to go see all that, see all the stuff they have. It's funny because my family up north is big into tractor pulling as well.
Mm.
And I always forget, but it's cool whenever I go back to visit. I believe my cousins up there, their grandfather, which would be my grandpa's brother, which I believe was the one that actually passed away. He was the first person to put a jet engine on a tractor for tractor pulling. And so I got to go see the original one. It's called the Hummingbird, I believe. And it was the first tractor with a jet engine for tractor pulling. And
Is it like
they fire it up every once in a while.
Is it like, what is it? The Abrams tanks that use a
it's like a
turbine.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like a turbine engine.
So
And,
not using it for propulsion, like
no.
Not
going through a gearbox.
Not like a rocket, but yeah, through a gearbox. Okay.
That's kind of cool. It's got like two like 6-foot tires that are 3 foot wide on the back, and yeah, it's a beast. Probably not by today's standards, but for back in the 70s, or I think it's 70s or 80s whenever they made it. So, but
I will be dealing with those gearboxes starting Monday. Fun fact.
So, really cool stuff. Real cool stuff. So,
speaking of Jamie, I know we've talked a couple times about his anchor point system on the podcast. He, I believe, sold out, but he's doing another batch soon, and I think it might be up on his website by the time this podcast comes out. So if you guys want his really cool, like, really super cost-effective 0-point system, maybe go check out Jamie at JSpec Engineering. Now is a good time.
Mm-hmm.
We have a code, but I've already forgotten what it is. It's like tap that or something.
Yep.
Sean H says, let's say you've got a VMC and you want to start doing some part-time job shop work or whatever you can get while also working your full-time job. Make a website, social media presence, hand out samples of parts you made, or just go right to Xometry? Question mark.
Do you want to take this, or do you want me to take it?
Sure, I can start. So you've already have the VMC, it sounds like. I would say you don't have to choose. You can parallel path these. So definitely start on the Xometry train. Sign up for Subtract. We'll eventually take on new vendors. And while you're doing that, also work on your social media. And then while you're doing that, I would say come up with some product that you design and sell. And that can be the thing that you use on social media and that you hand out to people. For example, I don't know why I have this. So we were looking at a marketing piece for Subtract, something that we can like send out with some of our packages early on or show off at trade shows. Or I just want to send a bunch to people in the community. But we are going to do a Subtract calculator. And I've already started working on the design. We're going to use one of these Casio 4 functions, just like a good, solid, reliable 4 function calculator. And I'm going to pull the guts out of there and then make an all machined housing for it and machined buttons. So like that'll be something that'll come across really well on social media. It'll look good on my Instagram. It'll look good on the YouTube. It'll be something useful and not just like, a desk toy. Like everybody needs a calculator. While at the same time, it's not going to cost me that much. And, there'll be probably $5 or $6 a piece or something to make. It checks a lot of the boxes. It gets you it gives you something to show off while also gives you something that you can give away to customers. And, if you do something that you can also sell, I don't think anyone would be interested in my fancy Casio calculators, but if you did a product that someone also might buy, it'll give you a little bit of revenue to get going and kind of, do all of these things at the same time.
when you do that calculator, you need to make it to where the buttons are flexures and it's all one piece.
That would be cool. Right now, that is not how I have it designed, but I don't see why you couldn't.
Because from an assembly perspective, that'd be the easiest, and it'd be super
Yes, it
cool.
would.
It'd be from a machining, because then you only have to deal with one part, as a whole deal, 2 ops, and then it'd be cool to have it as a flexure. Just a thought, not that you have to do it, but a thought.
I'm still choosing materials too. I got about 3/4 of the way through designing it, and then kind of lost momentum on it. I need to get back to it. But the question is, like, do I anodize? Do I Cerakote? I kind of want to use this as a excuse to build a relationship with an anodizer. There's one company local that I would like to test out. And so, maybe I make the buttons out of aluminum and then anodize them red, or maybe I make the case out of aluminum and anodize that red.
Yeah.
Or I could just, I also kind of want it to be heavy. So maybe I make it all stainless and then Cerakote it, or just mild steel and Cerakote it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Many decisions.
I don't really have a whole lot to add to that. You kind of hit the nail on the head on that one. The biggest thing is if you try to build relationships, try to find shops that you want to work with. That'd be the only other thing. That's something that we struggle with some, but we also have a lot of luck with. We've been very lucky, but like starting out in the beginning, you just got to go shake hands and meet people. Because unfortunately, a lot of the older businesses that exist in our area are not going to find us via social media. And the only way they're going to find us is either through a different customer that we've already have in the area, just talking about our work, or us going and like physically knocking on their door, or doing some sort of other traditional advertising that may or may not pan out.
Yeah. And your website is never, ever going to compete with Xometry or Fictive or...
That's if you're trying to be like that, though.
One. No, I mean, like, if someone Googles you, sure. But if they Google, like, Machine Shop Arkansas, Xometry's still going to be the top one that shows up.
They are.
The next 30 established shops are going to show up first.
We got our Walther contact through our website.
Really? They just found you?
They found us, yeah.
That's impressive.
So, like, they went through, like, 30 or 40 machine shops in our area and just were reaching out to all of them. So they were just searching all the shops. So, I mean, like, it happens. So,
okay,
like,
fair enough.
They're probably our biggest customer now. So,
yeah.
And they just because we had a website page, and our website page was like Etsy crap. So, like, I'm surprised they even reached out, which we're in the process of changing.
That's good. I will say, so I was talking to Jacob earlier today. Subtract is going to open source our like instant quoting thingy. Well, it's not instant yet, but like we're gonna open source our like take orders online thing. So if anybody has a shop and they want to be able to take orders directly online, it's not as smooth as like Xometry. Their system is really good, and it's gonna be a while before we get there. But like right now, our systems are pretty smooth, where someone submits a part on subtractmanufacturing.com, and then we can get them a quote back normally within like an hour or less, basically depending if one of us is sitting there watching the email come in. Eventually, that will be at least more automated with Toolpath. Like eventually, they'll have an API, and we can reduce a couple more steps. But we'll open source that, so if someone wants to do their own website where they can have an easy way for their customers to submit parts, they'll be able to. So that's coming. That's definitely a longer term plan because our system's not even finished yet. But I don't know, if you're interested in that, send me a message and we'll think about you in a year, I guess. Jacob showed me a preview of our custom website.
Oh, nice.
Because right now we kind of have a bunch of things duct taped together, like Airtable and our website, and there's just a handful of things. Oh, Gmail. Like they're all just kind of duct taped together with automations. But we're working on like a full custom from the ground up thingy, and it's looking really good. The big thing it'll do is it'll make quoting faster, because like the whole job process right now takes us, I mean, realistically, still a couple hours. Like we get the quote out faster, but like entering information and making the PO for the shop and, you know, putting things on the job board is all pretty manual and time consuming. And with that stuff all automated, it'll be quick. So I'm excited for that.
Your website's definitely improving.
It's getting there. I haven't looked at it in a couple days, actually. I should probably do that at some point. We're also going to open source all of our like inspection processes. We're going to open source our tool library, which will include Kanban cards for it and drawer organizers and stuff like that. But you know, the stuff all takes time. And not only does it take time, but we also have to test it after we make it. So that'll go up on the website at some point. And my brother agreed to come help us with marketing stuff.
Nice.
So, he hasn't actually gotten fully integrated with the, you know, me and Jacob yet, but with Scott doing website, my brother doing kind of larger picture marketing, we are in a pretty good place, I think.
Good deal. Glad to hear it. It's that time. The time where I get to say goodbye to everyone, I guess. Me and AJ both. Thanks, guys, for hanging out with us. Sorry I've missed everyone for a couple weeks because of my vacation, but now I'm recovering from that slowly. But anyways, thanks for hanging out with us. And this has been Harrison with Precision Ingenuity, signing out with AJ from Audacity/Subtract Manufacturing.
Yeah. Right now, mostly Subtract, so...
We'll see you guys later.
Taps and patience, our daily grind. In this machine shop, we'll always find joy and struggles all intertwined. Taps and patience, one of a kind.